On 11 May, Allen and Unwin told Tolkien that they had interested one of the outstanding firms of American publishers in The Hobbit, and said that this firm would like a number of further illustrations in color and suggested employing good American artists. Allen and Unwin, however, thought it would be better if all the illustrations were from your hand. Tolkien answered, "Dear Sir, thank you for the information concerning prospective American publication. Could you tell me the name of the firm, and what are likely to be the financial arrangements? As for the illustrations, I am divided between knowledge of my own inability and fear of what American artists, doubtless of admirable skill, might produce. In any case, I agree that all the illustrations ought to be by the same hand. 4 professional pictures would make my own amateurish productions look rather silly. I have some pictures in my drawer, but though they represent scenes from the mythology on the outskirts of which the Hobbit had his adventures, they do not really illustrate his story. The only possible one is the original colored version of Mirkwood, redrawn in black and white for the Hobbit. I should have to try and draw some 5 or 6 others for the purpose. I will attempt this, as far as time allows in the middle of term, if you think it advisable. But I could not promise anything for some time. Perhaps the matter does not allow of much delay." It might be advisable, rather than lose the American interest, to let the Americans do what seems good to them, as long as it was possible, I should like to add, to veto anything from or influenced by the Disney studios, for all whose works I have a warm loathing. I have seen American illustrations that suggest that excellent things might be produced, only too excellent for their companions. But perhaps you could tell me how long there is before I must produce samples that might hope to satisfy transatlantic juvenile taste, or its expert connoisseurs. Yours sincerely, J.R.R. Tolkien. Allen and Unwin suggested to Tolkien that The Hobbit should be published in October, just after the beginning of the new term at Oxford. They also told him that they had forwarded his letter about illustrations to the Houghton Mifflin Company of Boston, Massachusetts, who were to publish the book in America. On 28 May, Tolkien wrote back, "Dear Sirs, the date of publication is, of course, your business, and entails many considerations outside my knowledge. In any case, the final decision is now, I suppose, made, and America has also to be considered. But as far as Great Britain is concerned, I cannot help thinking that you are possibly mistaken in taking Oxford University and its terms into account, and alternatively, if you do, in considering early October better than June. Most of Oxford University will take no interest in such a story, that part of it that Will is already clamoring, and indeed beginning to add The Hobbit to my long list of never procrastinations. As far as local interest is concerned, it is probably at its peak. Not that at its best it will amount to much reckoned in direct sales, I imagine. October, with the inrush of a new academic year, is most distracted. Mr. Lewis of Magdalen, who reviews for the Times Literary Supplement, tells me that he has already written urging a review and claiming the book as a specialist in fairy stories, and he is now disgruntled because he will have to wait till December for The Hobbit to be read and written up properly. Also, if the book had been available before the university disintegrates, I could have got my friend the editor of the Oxford University magazine, who has been giving it a good dose of my dragon lore recently, to allocate it and get a review at the beginning of the autumn term. However, I say these things too late, I expect. In any case, I do not suppose it makes in the long run a great deal of difference. I have only one personal motive in regretting this delay, and that is that I was anxious that it should appear as soon as possible, because I am under research contracts since last October and not supposed to be indulging in exams or in frivolities. Regarding Houghton Mifflin & Co., I was perturbed to learn that my letter had been sent across the water. It was not intended for American consumption, unedited. I should have expressed myself rather differently. I now feel even greater hesitation in posing further as an illustrator. However, I enclose 3 colored pictures. I cannot do much better, and if their standard is too low, the HM Co. can say so at once and without offense, as long as they send them back. Having publication in view, I could possibly improve the standard a little, make drawings rather bolder in color and less messy and fussy in detail, and also larger. I will try my hand at them as soon as possible, which is not likely to be before their verdict arrives, if cabled. Yours truly, J.R.R. Tolkien. Tolkien sent his publishers more of his drawings, including Rivendell, Bilbo woke with the early sun in his eyes, Bilbo comes to the huts of the Raft Elves, and Conversation with Smaug. He added another one called The Hill, Hobbiton Across the Water, to a letter he sent on 31 August 1937. Dear Sir, I send herewith the colored version of the frontispiece. If you think it good enough, you may send it on to the Houghton Mifflin Co. Could you, at the same time, make it finally clear to them, it does not seem easy, that the first 3 drawings were not illustrations to The Hobbit, but only samples. They cannot be used for that book and may now be returned. Also, that the ensuing 5 drawings were specially made for the HM Co. and for The Hobbit. They are, of course, at liberty to reject or use all or any of these 5. But I would point out that they are specially selected so as to distribute illustration fairly evenly throughout the book, especially when taken in conjunction with the black and white drawings. I suppose no question of remuneration arises? I have no consciousness of merit, though the labor was considerable, and I imagine that the gratis quality of my efforts compensates for other defects. But I gathered that the HM Co. original terms simply covered The Hobbit as you produced it, and that they then proposed to top up with colored pictures as a selling attraction of their own, employing good American artists. They would have had to pay these independently. At the moment, I am in such difficulties that even a very small fee would be a blessing. Would it be possible to suggest, when they have decided if they want any of these things, that a small financial consideration would be gracious? Perhaps you will advise me or tell me where I get off. I need hardly say that such an idea only occurs to me with regard to the Americans, who have given a lot of unnecessary trouble. Even if I did not know that your production costs have been excessive and that I have been hard on proofs, you are most welcome at any time to anything you think I can do in the way of drawing or redrawing that is fit to use on The Hobbit. I hope Mr. Baggins will eventually come to my rescue, in a moderate way. I do not expect pots of troll gold. I am beginning to have hopes that the publisher's Vita jacket may be justified. I have had 2 testimonials recently which promise moderately well. For one thing, Professor Gordon has actually read the book, supposed to be a rare event, and assures me that he will recommend it generally and to the Book Society. I may warn you that his promises are usually generous, but his judgment, at any rate, is pretty good. The most valuable is the document I enclose, in case it may interest you. A letter from R. Meigs, at present editing the Oxford magazine. He has no reason for sparing my feelings and is usually a plain speaker. Of course, he has no connections with reviewing coteries and is virtually a mere member of the avuncular public. Yours sincerely, J.R.R. Tolkien. Allen and Unwin of London published the first edition of The Hobbit on 21 September 1937, with a print run of 1,500 copies, which sold out by December because of enthusiastic reviews. The first printing was illustrated in black and white by Tolkien, who designed the dust jacket as well. Houghton Mifflin of Boston and New York reset type for an American edition to be released early in 1938. Allen and Unwin decided to incorporate the color illustrations into their second printing, released at the end of 1937. Despite the book's popularity, paper rationing due to World War II and not ending until 1949 meant that the Allen and Unwin edition of the book was often unavailable during this period. The Hobbit was such a success that a sequel was already being demanded. Shortly after the first publication, Unwin notified Tolkien of the unanimously positive reception of his books, and warned that a large public would be clamoring next year to hear more from you about hobbits. The stage was now set for the greatest fiction of the 20th century, to be discussed next time.